Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. So I've had some really nice beers from this brewery over the years, quite a few different styles, but I think it's fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. So this is one of the breweries that I always keep an eye out for when I go over to Copenhagen. And the beer that we're going to have a look at today, I believe, is one of their latest releases. Although when I saw it, I did kind of recognise it. So I think it could well be a rebrew, actually. So let me know about that in the comment section below, if you do happen to know. But very much looking forward to trying it. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. Always nice to review Danish beers here on Rampant Lion Reviews. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Gørløse in the northwest of the city. And we're having a look at another beer from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Vægvæsø. It comes in at 6.2% ABV, and it's another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, I bought this beer at Kiosk, which is one of my favourite beer shops to go to in Copenhagen, along with Beer Hive and Fish and Beer. So do check out all three of those if you happen to find yourself in the city. But you know, in Kiosk they had a few different dry and bitters. I think there was about 4 of them or something like that, and they were all different kinds of New England IPA. And you know, when it comes down to it, if you're faced with the same style of beer from the same brewery, you're going to pick the one that either has the funkiest artwork or the coolest name. So that's kind of what I did with this one. Actually, I did like the artwork on this beer. But yeah, I think this one should be quite interesting. The hop bill in this is a little bit old school, so quite looking forward to it, I have to say. But always nice to return to Dry and Bitter, so let's crack on and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dry and Bitter Brewery in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because I live very close to Denmark in the south of Sweden. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Dry and Bitter Brewery. So, Dry and Bitter Brewery, as I've mentioned to you before, was founded back in 2015 by the owners of the Fermentorum Beer Bar. And this is Soren Parker Wagner and Jay Pollard. And they opened this brewery up as a continuation of the Crooked Moon brewing brand that they had previously. But these guys were also involved in the foundation of Ølkollektivet, which is a collective brewing place in Gørløse, like I mentioned earlier, to the northwest of the city. And there was a few other breweries involved in that as well. So for a long time, they were brewing their beers here along with Gamma, who have now moved to their own brewery in Herlev, and also Ulsnegern, who are still involved as well in Ølkollektivet. But at various points, Bad Seed Brewing, Black Rooster and Ghost Brewing, amongst a few others, have also brewed their beers here at different points in time. But in addition to the Copenhagen Fermentorum bar, they also have another bar in Aarhus, and both of the Fermentorum bars do have beers that are brewed exclusively for them. But today they brew around 200,000 litres of beer per year, and they've just been gradually expanding the brewery capacity over the years. But they host their own beer festival every year, which is called Fermentorum's Flying Circus, so I will need to keep an eye on the Dry and Bitter social media and see when that's going to start up again, because I think that could be quite an interesting one to go and see. But as of January 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 200 different kinds of beers, and they also produce some sour beers now as well, which I'll need to check out. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Dry and Bitter Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is everything for your history section in this video, and always nice to come back to Dry and Bitter Brewing, as I've said. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we go with this one. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty funky, and we have had similar from some of the other Dry and Bitter Brewing beers before. But yeah, they're saying vague vessel with this one. It actually kind of reminds me of like it looks a little bit like a kind of, it does look a little bit like the female reproductive anatomy, I have to say. Yeah, looks a little bit like a cervix or something. So maybe that is the vague vessel for carrying babies. And this is a little bit ominous down here as well. I do wonder, is that intentional? Because the Danish breweries do like to do some naughty things on their beers sometimes. But there you can see Dry and Bitter Brewing Company symbol, vague vessel, and there's a little bit about the beer on the side here as well. So this one says, a half-remembered dream of sipping tropical haze on a faraway extraterrestrial craft. Dry hopped with a concoction of Citra, Mosaic and Simcoe. Vague vessel will transport you back to hyper-colour heavens. So yeah, quite nice. But I believe I want to say I paid about 45 or 50 Danish kroner for this one. So that translates to roughly about 60 Swedish. So this beer cost about €6 in that case, $7 American. Just for those of you wanting a price reference from across the world. So that'll be what, about £5 sterling, something like that. Yeah, pretty good. But yeah, as you can see, plain top on this one. Looks pretty nice. And yeah, it says it was canned on the 6th of December 2021, so still in pretty good condition. But let's get this guy out then, and we'll see how we get on. A 6.2% New England IPA with Citra, Mosaic and Simcoe. These are all hops that we know quite well, all three of them American. Simcoe at 12% alpha acid usually gives you a lovely kind of soft passion fruity note in a New England IPA. Mosaic about 14% alpha acid, kind of tangerine oranges in my experience. And then Citra about 14% alpha acid, big juicy mango notes, but also quite a big lemony, limey, zesty sort of thing. Yeah, so this should be pretty damn nice actually. There we go, this should be pretty cool. Yeah, anyway. So, as you can see, it's poured exactly as you would expect from a New England hazy IPA. So, yeah, I don't know how well you're going to see the colour on this one. I mean, with this phone, as I've explained before, the phone that I film on, the screen that it shows me is always a little bit, it always looks a little bit darker than it turns out in the final video. But to me, this beer comes across as being a lovely, very bright yellow colour. You can see there's a solid finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one, although in fairness in the middle it does have a little bit of a kind of creamy tint to it, but yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but I mean overall it does look pretty damn nice actually. But yeah, lovely kind of bright yellow colour, big, it's kind of like a sort of mango juice colour. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's really just what the colour reminds me of. But yeah, lovely kind of bright yellow mango juice type colour with this one. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in or any barleys that you do will of course affect the colour as well, but with New England IPAs you don't really have to care about that. But yeah, it is pretty good. But the level of haze on this one for a 6.2% as well is pretty damn impressive. So the yeah, I mean the level of haze is usually dependent on the yeast, the oak content and the wheat content. This can vary from brewery to brewery and even recipe to recipe. So yeah, there's no real rules about that. But for a 6.2%, that's a pretty damn hazy beer actually. I do like how this one goes together. But honestly, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I think we can have a little look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. So yeah, nothing else to say about that, but here we go. Ooh, that does smell really nice. It smells very familiar and nostalgic as well. I mean, Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic, it's a hop bill that we've had many a time before. So yeah, this is pretty familiar actually. What I'm going to say about this one though, it does smell very fresh, and as I always say, I think there's 6 different elements you have to compare. You have to think about when it comes to a New England IPA. So first off would be the kind of wheaty farmhousey character. 2 would be the kind of rye leaning grainy side of things. The beers can also be wheaty and bitey, oaty, creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, but they can also have a little bit of a sweeter brown sugary element to them as well. Now, first impression of this one is that it has a wee bit of this kind of farmhousey vegetal sort of thing. You can sometimes get this in certain beers. But that's the first impression. When you sugar this one up a little bit, you can smell a sort of farmhousey, vegetal, woody kind of thing coming out of this one. I'd be curious to know what yeast they used in this. But yeah, you can certainly smell a little bit of that in this beer. And I have found that with some New England IPAs, you get these really weird, crackery, farmhousey, vegetally type aromas. But you never really get that in the flavour. You don't really get much of that in the flavour from some of the ones that have this. And dry and bitter, from my past experiences of them, I don't think we're going to get this kind of vegetally sort of thing in this beer. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit, when you sugar this beer up, it's definitely got a little bit of this kind of earthy, vegetal sort of thing to it that's not overly pleasant, to be quite honest with you. So that's a wee bit unusual. But let's focus on the malty side of things and see. If we stop sugaring the beer, you don't get so much of that aroma. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, the backbone of this one, there's definitely a wee bit of but yeah, the backbone of this one, there's definitely a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty. There's a wee bit of a sort of bread crusty backbone to it for sure. You do get quite a little bit of a white bread there from the barley malt, absolutely a nice kind of fresh white bread. But there's also a wee bit of there's a little bit of bread crust, wee bit of white bread, and there's also a little bit of a wheaty sort of thing too. So I do like how that goes together. I think the more that you smell of this one, I think it starts to lean more towards the oaty side of things. And as I've said before, when it comes to New England IPAs, quite often you can use the oats as a kind of indicator of how old the beer is. So the older a beer is, the more dry the oaty character starts to come. Early on it will be very, very creamy. This one does smell still quite creamy, but you're starting to get wee hints of kind of more dry, powdery oaty character out of this one. So yeah, bread crust, white bread. Yeah, bread crust, white bread, some nice kind of strong wheaty sort of things. And there's also a wee bit, you get that lovely kind of oaty creaminess sitting on top, but also with a wee bit of kind of dryness as well. So yeah, I like how that one, I do like how that goes together, absolutely. Yeah, aroma wise, I think this one goes together. Aroma wise, I think this one goes together very, very nicely actually, in terms of the malty side of things. You do get a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy creaminess out of this as well, the more that you smell of it. But yeah, it takes a wee bit of time for that to come out. So nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its aroma from the malty side of things. As I say, it does have a wee bit of that sort of vegetally, herbally kind of thing underneath, but you can sometimes get that in these beers. But yeah, if we take the aroma in a bit more deeply, yeah, it's definitely more of a kind of oaty and bready New England IPA. So yeah, I like how this one goes together actually. It does get a thumbs up from me in that regard. So I think we can leave it at that for the malty side of things. Let's focus on the hoppy part of the beer before we taste it. So, hoppy side of things. The green component for me, there's a little touch of earthiness to it, but it leans towards that big floral aromatic sort of thing. With all three of these hops, you're going to get that. But remember, New England IPAs tend to rely on late and dry hopping, or late addition and dry hopping I should say, and with those you don't get too much in the way of bittering. It's early addition hops that are the ones that are going to give you bitterness. This beer, I should have said earlier as well, does have Citra in the whirlpool, so there is a bit of early addition hopping with this one, and that's potentially why it has quite a big and deep floral aromatic character to it. You do get quite a little bit of a grassy zestiness out of this one. The grassy and zestiness I think is most likely to come from Citra in this beer, and the earthiness is most likely to come from Mosaic actually. Mosaic always has that wee hint of earthiness with it. But yeah, green component for me is mainly leaning toward a kind of big floral aromatic character. On the fruity side of things, you have on the fruity side of things with this one, definitely you're picking up that soft passion fruity note from the soft passion fruit from the Simcoe, and a nice juicy mango from the Citra as well. That's very nice. So it does lean a little bit more towards that soft tropical side of things, but at the very front of the nose, you get a little bit more of that kind of oily orange, tangerine-y sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. Yeah, soft mango, bit of passion fruit, and a more oily orange tangerine. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is pretty nice. I do get a fair wee bit of a kind of lemony, limey, zesty kind of character to it as well, and that's most likely to come from the Citra, of course. But yeah, this beer, in terms of what I would expect with these hops and this particular beer style, it's not doing anything particularly surprising, but we know this style now. There's so many New England IPAs out there, you just want them to be good. You're not really expecting them to kind of blow your mind at this point in time, to be quite honest with you. So there we go, we've got the rest of it out and into the glass. So I think it's about time that we try this one then, but as I always say, take a bit of time to mull over the aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But yeah, this one is the Vague Vessel, a New England IPA at 6.2% ABV from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company in Gurløse to the northwest of Copenhagen in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty nice actually. First impression of it is very smooth, oaty, creamy, juicy New England IPA. That sort of vegetally herbal kind of thing I was picking up from this one hasn't really come to fruition in the flavour. Yeah, this is a big oaty, smooth, creamy sort of thing actually. So yeah, I like that. Yeah. Ooh. Where do we start with this one then? I'm going to say it's another solid New England IPA from Dry and Bitter. I mean, for me, the best beer that I've had from these guys was the Hey Femme, the 5th anniversary beer that they did. That's a very difficult one for them to beat actually. So this one's not quite on that level, but it's still pretty damn solid actually. It's a little bit more old school, this one. This goes back to the sort of New England IPAs where we're getting in kind of 2015, 2016 sort of time. So yeah, but keep that in mind with this one. Yeah, this is nice. As I say, the more that I drink of this, the kind of juicier it gets, but it's a big oaty, smooth, creamy kind of thing. But yeah, gets a thumbs up from me then. Let's see if we can let's just see if we can break the flavour of this down for you a little bit more. So middle of the palate then, middle part of the palate. So the middle third of your tongue. Base of the beer, it's got a lovely little bit of a kind of bread crusty quality to it, which I really quite like. On top of that, you have a really nice. You can feel on top of the kind of slightly bread crusty layer. There's a lot of quite dense white bread in there, so that's the barley malt part of the beer. So yeah, a little teeny touch of bread crust, a more dense white bread, and then you can feel the thicker wheaty qualities. You can really feel the thicker wheaty qualities just sitting in on top of that. So the bready backbone of this beer comes across as very, very dense, but a little touch grainy underneath actually. So yeah, wee bit of bread crust. Yeah, wee bit of bread crust, dense white bread, and a little bit of a thicker, wheaty layer on top of that. That is the backbone of this beer. This one, the more you drink of it, the thicker it gets. Actually, I would say that this is one of the from memory, I would even go as far as saying that this could be one of the thickest 6.2%ers that I've had actually, which is quite a statement to make when you think about how many beers I've reviewed. But yeah, this one, for its percentage, I find this very, very thick. It doesn't have lactose or anything in it. No, just Bugmalt Vera Havre. Yeah, it's just wheat, barley malt, and oat malt base. So maybe it is a kind of oat heavy one, as I kind of thought from the aroma. But yeah, that's interesting. So on top of the kind of wheaty layer, then you can feel the oaty character to this one, and it's quite interesting because the oats feel very, very smooth. But in the very centre of your palate, you do get a little circle there, and you can feel that little kind of slightly porridgey type thing that you get. And this happens, as I say, the character of the oats in a beer change over time, and this is always an indicator of how old your New England IPA is, I would say. So yeah, in the centre of the palate, there's a little circle there, and it feels like there's a wee bit of a kind of porridgey type character underneath this one. So that's definitely quite interesting for me. I like how that comes across in this beer. But yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that. On top of that little kind of wetter oaty character in the middle, the kind of porridgey thing that I'm talking about, you do start to get a little bit of sweetness out of this one. So there's a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing coming out of this beer. So yeah, it's nice how it goes together in that regard as well. So yeah, butter candy, butterscotch. Yeah, butter candy, butterscotch, and a wee bit of just a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. As you move out towards the edges of your palate, you start to get a little bit more of that McVitie's digestive biscuit. I do suspect that is Golden Promise. But as I say, the thing that impresses me with this is that it's 6.2%. It's so bloody thick. This is a very, very thick beer. This one for its percentage. Probably the thickest I've had from this brewery, and the thickest in the style category that I've had in a wee while. So that is interesting. Yeah, food for thought anyway. So I think we don't need to say anything more about the middle third of the palate then. So let's look at the back third of the palate. Border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up there. Yeah, there's a nice little bit of a bready build up, which is good. Wee bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing. Then the base of that back third of the palate is a wee bit more kind of grainy and bread crusty. On top of that, you get more. You can feel that thick white bready character again, and it's even thicker actually, and a bit taller on the back third of your palate. Then above that, you've got a little bit of how do we say? You do have a little bit of a more. You do have a little bit more of a kind of. You can feel some of the yeasty character coming out of the beer. So yeah, bread crust in the base, thicker white bready note on top of that. You can feel some of the wheat there as well, and the wheat is a little bit bitier on the back part of the palate. Then on top of all of that, you've got a kind of yeasty part as well, so you can feel there's a wee bit of a kind of. You can feel that there's a wee bit of a kind of doughy, yeasty kind of thing in there, and it's got a little bit of a kind of dryness. It's got a little bit of a sort of dryness to it as well. So yeah, you can feel that thicker, doughy, yeasty element to it. It's got a little bit of a kind of dryness to it as well, and yeah, it goes together really nicely in that sense. So yeah, the flavour's definitely taller on that back third of your palate. You can feel there the flavour is kind of like this, but then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down a wee bit and squashes together as you move further forward. But yeah, definitely a big thick beast of a beer, this one. A lot of a big bready oaty leaning thing this, but I think the more that I think about it, I think the wheat is playing a big role in thickening out both of these elements. So that's food for thought as well. Anyway, on the hoppy side of things then, brain's not working. On the hoppy side of things then, let's look at the green component. So back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, but then as you move further forward, you really start to get that nice big floral aromatic sort of thing coming out of this beer. So yeah. So yeah, wee bit of earthiness, nice big floral aromatic side of things, and then round the front curve of the palate, you start to get that lighter grassy. You start to get that lighter grassy side out of the beer as well. So yeah, it is in that sense. It is very nice actually. The green component I think it's not quite as intense and floral as I thought it was going to be from the aroma. The grassiness comes out a wee bit more, but it does work really well. And again, I think that's down to the fact that, you know, New England IPAs tend to rely on late and dry hopping rather than being all about the early edition hopping that you'll get in other sub-styles, if you like. But yeah, it goes together very nicely, actually. So on the fruity side of things then, the front third of your palate, let's look at that. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a bready build up in there, wee touch of bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a kind of smooth, yeah, you get a little bit of a white bready smoothness and a kind of oaty character coming out of it as well. So yeah, I like that about this one. So sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, there's a nice kind of there's a nice sort of passion fruity note there, and that's the going to be from a mix of the Citra and the Simcoe in this one. But you get a nice kind of softer passion fruity note there. The softer side of it's going to come from the Simcoe, I think, but the more punchy side of it's going to come from the Citra. But as you move further forward, it very quickly becomes a nice big juicy mango, and then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get the nice oily tangerine notes. You get the nice oily tangerine notes from the mosaic in this one. But yeah, on the very kind of front tip of your tongue, there's a lot of kind of lemon limey character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, this I think goes together really well, this one. I mean, nothing surprising when you consider the hop bill and the style of beer that it is. The main thing about this one is just how thick and creamy it is, and yeah, thickest and creamiest one I've had from Dry and Bitter, as I've said, and thickest within this style category for quite a wee while, so that's interesting too. But yeah, on the, I think we said everything about the flavour. So on the mouthfeel, I would say that this beer, it's you know, full bodied for me. It's a very thick New England IPA. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's a big oaty kind of creamy mouthfeel, actually. So yeah, I do like how this one goes together. But then on the on the, what do you call it? On the hoppy bitterness side of things, I think this one, what would we say? I think this might be 30. Yeah, I think this is a fairly standard 30 IBUs. The malt base, as we said, smooth, thick, little tiny touch of sweetness to it. And then you've got a lovely kind of juicy, fruity side of things. It's got a wee bit of oiliness from the orange, but quite a soft tropical character as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business, and it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this was the Vague Vessel, a New England IPA at 6.2% ABV from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company in Gurlos in Copenhagen. Another solid beer from them, as we've come to expect from them over the years. And yeah, it has a wee bit of a nostalgic value to it, but one of the thickest I've come across in quite a wee while. But let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company. And yeah, we'll do this one. We'll visit these guys again. So check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys on the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.